This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Much of the discussion around Trump's budget bill has focused on the massive cuts to Medicaid, the tax giveaways to the rich, and the impact on the national debt to the tune of $3 trillion. Meanwhile, Vice President Vance, who cast the tie-breaking vote, was focused elsewhere on immigration. He wrote on social media, quote, "Everything else, the CBO score, the proper baseline, the minutia of the Medicaid policy, is immaterial compared to the ICE money and immigration enforcement provisions," unquote. This bill provides a whopping $170 billion to transform immigration enforcement and detention. This includes $45 billion for new detention jails. That's 265% more than the current ICE detention budget and more than the budget of the federal prison system. ICE's enforcement budget would increase by $30 billion, a threefold increase, and there's some $46 billion for border walls and more. American Immigration Council calls the bill, quote, "the largest investment in detention and deportation in U.S. history, a policy choice that does nothing to address the systemic failures of our immigration system while inflicting harm, sowing chaos, and tearing families apart," unquote. For more, we're joined by Aaron Reichlin-Melnick, senior fellow at the American Immigration Council, which just published the in-depth analysis of the immigration enforcement provisions of the bill. Aaron, welcome back to Democracy Now! So you have the bill being passed, eked through, needed the vice president to cast the tie-breaking vote, and Trump wasn't celebrating in D.C. He was deflecting attention from the millions who would lose Medicaid funding, something like 17 million, to go to what he's calling alligator Alcatraz in the Florida Everglades. Talk about the significance of this and this proposed massive increase to the ICE budget.
Yeah. If we look at the reconciliation bill, we can see that the amount of funding that ICE would get under this bill would be transformative for the agency. We're talking nearly 20 years worth of detention funding to be spent only in a 4-year period, and an increase to ICE's enforcement budget beyond anything we've ever seen before, allowing the agency to expand mass deportations over the next 4 years to every community nationwide.
Proposal, immigration enforcement was costing the federal government more than all of the other federal law enforcement agencies combined. We're talking about the Drug Enforcement Administration, the FBI, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, the Secret Service, and the Marshal Service. The immigration enforcement budget was already larger than all of those together. What size are we talking about now in terms of this expansion?
Yeah, we are talking about a significant increase beyond every other federal law enforcement agency. If this money goes through, if the House votes for this bill, you will see ICE now being the single largest federal law enforcement agency in the history of the nation, potentially with enough funding to hire more law enforcement agents than the FBI and more detention potentially than the entire Federal Bureau of Prisons. And beyond that, the funds also provide billions of dollars to state and local governments, meaning that when you look at the Everglades detention camp that Trump was at yesterday, you could see every cent of that facility being paid for by the federal government and not by Florida. Similar facilities are likely to open in other GOP states because we see that the reconciliation bill contains $3.5 billion for ICE to hand out to states that are looking to do similar things to what Governor DeSantis has done already. So really transformative at a national level and at a state level for immigration enforcement in this country, like nothing we've seen in the modern era.
And could you talk about the impact that this is having on the ground in the communities affected? For instance, there are reports now that in Los Angeles County, the ridership on mass transportation there has dropped about 15%, and largely Latinos and immigrants are the ones riding the buses and rapid transit in Los Angeles.
Measurable drop in civic participation in communities where this kind of enforcement is being carried out. People aren't going to their jobs. People aren't going to school. Children are staying home. Parents are keeping their kids in safety. They aren't riding the buses. They aren't going to the parks. They aren't going to restaurants. Takeout is up in New York City and places where these crackdowns have gone on. So we are seeing immigration enforcement ripple through the United States, and the impacts being felt particularly in communities that have been the target for heavy enforcement by the Trump administration. And should this bill pass, they could potentially get the resources to do heavy enforcement in not just Los Angeles, but in New York, in Chicago, in Philadelphia, in every major city around the country. You could see another Los Angeles.
Aaron, can you say why you refuse to use the term alligator Alcatraz, instead saying Everglades detention camp?
I mean, alligator Alcatraz it's a public relations name. It's, Alcatraz was a prison where it held people who had been convicted of crimes and were serving their sentence. But immigration detention is not for people serving criminal sentences. The people held in detention often have no criminal record, or they have minor, lower misdemeanors, or if they do have a serious criminal record, they've usually served their time, and if they were U.S. citizens, would have already been released. The Trump administration loves to say that it's only going after the worst of the worst, but when they sent hundreds of people to Guantanamo Bay, fully a third of them had no criminal convictions at all. And we've seen with their deportation of people to Sikot in El Salvador to be imprisoned without trial, that hundreds of those people were likely innocent of any claimed gang ties and had no criminal records at all. So this is not Alcatraz, it's a detention camp that ICE is using to hold immigrants, many of whom will likely have no criminal record.
Aaron, Reichlin-Melnick, I want to bring into this conversation an activist in Florida. President Trump toured the new immigration jail in the Florida Everglades, flanked by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. What he's calling Alligator Alcatraz, a hastily built camp on an isolated airfield in the Everglades with massive tents that hold immigrants in cages with multiple bunk beds. Trump mocking the jailed immigrants, saying they'd have to learn how to fight alligators in order to escape the jail, surrounded by alligators, pythons, and other Everglades wildlife. In fact, I think he said it'll cost less to control them because you don't have to pay the alligators. The detention camp is expected to have a detention capacity for 5,000 people. At a press conference, Trump claimed the immigrants who would be held at the site would be some of the, quote, most vicious people on the planet.
It's known as Alligator Alcatraz, which is very appropriate because I looked outside and that's not a place I want to go hiking anytime soon. But very soon this facility will house some of the most menacing migrants, some of the most vicious people on the planet. We're surrounded by miles of treacherous swampland, and the only way out is really deportation.
The Florida Attorney General coined the nickname Alligator Alcatraz. He posted a promotional video about the jail in June, scored with hard rock music, including a graphic that shows an alligator with red eyes.
Ask state leaders to identify places for new temporary detention facilities. I think this is the best one. As I call it, Alligator Alcatraz. This 30-square-mile area is completely surrounded by the Everglades. Presents a efficient, low-cost opportunity to build a temporary detention facility because you don't need to invest that much in the perimeter. If people get out, there's not much waiting for them other than alligators and pythons. Nowhere to go, nowhere to hide.
Attorney General Othmeyer is also selling Alligator Alcatraz merchandise on his website. On his tour of the site, President Trump repeatedly echoed the idea the jail would be secured by alligators and snakes.
Snakes are fast, but alligators are, we're going to teach them how to run away from an alligator, okay? If they escape prison, how to run away. Don't run in a straight line. Run like this. And you know what? Your chances go up about 1%, okay? Not a good thing. We have a lot of bodyguards and a lot of cops that are in the form of alligators, you don't have to pay them so much. But I wouldn't want to run through the Everglades for long. It will keep people where they're supposed to be. This is a very important thing.
As this new Everglades jail is built and other expansions in Florida are being discussed, Florida's leading the nation in immigrant detention deaths. Isidro Perez, a 75-year-old man from Cuba who'd lived most of his life, 60 years in the United States, died last week in ICE custody. He was held at the Crome Detention Center in Miami as the Trump administration pushes for 3,000 arrests a day and detention numbers reach historic levels. At least 13 people have died while in ICE detention this year. For more about the Everglades jail and immigration detention, we're joined by Neri Lopez in Florida, senior organizer with Detention Watch Network, also an organizer with the Florida Detention Coalition. Neri, thanks so much for being with us. There were major protests outside as Trump was touring the jail. If you can talk about what your governor, Governor DeSantis, has called a one-stop shop, because the jail is on an airfield and people can be detained and deported immediately.
Yes, it's truly inhumane what's happening. And this new build of a detention center in the middle of the Everglades is going to isolate people tremendously. It's going to have an increase of conditions like overcrowding and hot temperatures, and also a lack of food. There's going to be so many transfers that's going to cut people from their loved ones and their support networks.
So talk about how this all came about. Talk about your major concerns right now, who's being held there, and also the deaths in ICE detention.
Yes. So as we found out that this was happening, people were of different sectors, like environmentalists, our folks who are in the Everglades area, from the Miccosukee and Seminole tribes, and community of immigrant folks have been absolutely just heartbroken that this is happening here. And as we were finding out, it was truly just something that is making it harder for people to see the vibrant community of Florida, right? This is not part of Florida's values. People are resisting. We are seeing protests happening there where they are seeing for themselves just what is happening, and the fact that they're building this tent building in the middle of the Everglades is truly inhumane.
I wanted to bring Aaron Reichlin-Melnick back into the conversation, senior fellow at the American Immigration Council. You have deaths in ICE detention, and you have Congress members all over the country, from Colorado to New Jersey to New York to California, attempting to inspect these often private detention facilities, and they are prevented from doing so. And most recently, the president said he can prevent these Congress members from moving in. Can you explain what's going on there? The oversight that they were empowered with, not being allowed to carry it out?
Yeah, for multiple years, Congress has written into the appropriations law a provision that says that any member of Congress may perform a surprise inspection at any facility used to detain people for the Department of Homeland Security. So when a member of Congress goes to a detention center, by law, they should be allowed in. And in fact, the law expressly says that they cannot be told that they have to make an appointment, only their staff. But unfortunately, we've now seen the Trump administration say, well, due to operational concerns, we are going to force members to actually make an appointment ahead of time, even though the law says they are not allowed to do that. This is happening as the detention in infrastructure has skyrocketed. The administration is holding 59,000 people in detention, despite Congress having budgeted only for 41,500. And given their overcrowding that we are seeing in detention facilities, the lack of medical staff, oversight is needed now more than ever, but it's becoming harder to do. Let
me ask Neri Lopez about President Trump, during his tour of the Everglades jail, saying he would approve a plan by Florida Governor DeSantis to speed up deportations by deputizing National Guard members to work as immigration judges. I want to repeat that. Deputizing National Guard as immigration judges. Talk about the significance of this.
This is so dangerous. What we're seeing is just something that we haven't seen before. National Guards don't have a background in immigration law. And so this is only going to create more deportations. It is going to create more separation of families, that people are not going to understand what's happening. And it's truly just very scary. It is not the values of Florida. It's not the values of our country to have National Guards posing as judges.
What is popular opinion, Neri, in Florida right now? I mean, we know that overall, Trump calls it the big, beautiful bill. So many people are calling it the big, ugly, terrible bill, that it has just hit new lows in terms of popular support, even among Republicans around the country. What about in Florida?
People don't want ICE. People don't want ICE, don't want people detained. People who are being detained are mothers, they're church members, they're people in the community, everyday working people. And we don't want ICE in our area. We don't want detention centers here. They are not helping our economy, is not helping our community who are here doing different types of jobs. And the fact that this $45 billion funding, ICE funding, is going to detain 100,000 people more is truly just very dangerous and very scary for so many people.
So what happens now? And in terms of Florida politics, I mean, it was unusual, Neri, to see President Trump standing with Florida Governor DeSantis. They were run against each other for president. They became very alienated. You have DeSantis wanting his wife to run for governor. President Trump has supported Congressman Donald. As we wrap up, how does this play into state politics?
Yeah, Trump's and Governor DeSantis' cruel detention expansion is only going to exacerbate so much confusion and fear into people. It's actually going to make a lot of people realize what's happening here and pay attention to the state politics. Once elections happen for governor and elected officials who are backing this agenda, is going to affect them as well, because people will be out there voting. People are realizing that this is happening here, and they are in the know of immigration detention. Now people are starting to actually be knowledgeable of what's happening and want to know. And this is only going to make more people go out to vote. It's going to make people be calling their representatives, because people power is here. And we are able to make a difference, and they can't keep doing this. They will not keep doing this without people raising their voice.
Neri Lopez, I want to thank you for being with us. Detention Watch Network, speaking to us from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Aaron Reichlin-Melnick in Washington, D.C. with the American Immigration Council. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.